F.A.Q with I can do it.
Ike's shrouded in light.
Right.
As we're getting gassed to death.
He's risen.
Well, see, it shouldn't be in this mode without recording. It's not recording, so. Alright. Fuck with me, camera.
Not like last week.
According to Terry and Ben, we gotta start trying to figure out how to not cuss for the first 15 minutes once we're monetized. We're not.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's Ike from Flipside Music, and welcome to What the F.A.Q. What the F.A.Q. Season 4, Episode 2. Only Episode 2.
Yes.
So sorry about the delay from the first podcasting episode. We've had a few problems starting out the year.
Yeah.
Dylan here got himself into a, well, he didn't get himself. The guy
Yeah.
ran into
Guy
him.
hit me, yeah.
So he got in a car accident. I had periodontal surgery 2 weeks ago. Gordo fell down a flight of steps.
Yeah.
So we are all in disarray here for the beginning of 2022.
Yeah, we were feeling all good the last episode you guys watched. We were feeling all good about 2022, and then like the next day, 2022 basically took us out back and beat us up.
Yeah. Taught us who was running shit. 2022 was like, what's my name? What's my name? Yeah. So
I hear you getting optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, here we are. Brand new. So you got a little bit of a cool background.
You guys can actually see it unlike last week's episode.
Last week you couldn't see that.
Although I kind of enjoyed the podcast episode. I think people did too.
I think so too. So
yeah, it seemed like
we should explore that.
Oddly enough, we got more views on the thing that you couldn't see.
Yeah. That makes sense. Maybe it's telling us something. Maybe it's maybe our visual approach isn't really the way to go. But anyway, here we are. So hopefully we'll continue on.
Yeah.
Dylan's
we're all
healed up
gimpy
enough.
I
can actually
talk again.
and still eating mushy food, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's all good.
You can breathe without hurting, and we're good now.
Yeah. We've reached a good point. So anyway, weekly question and answer show. For those of you guys who are new, you ask us a question, we give you an answer. So let's start with Ben COOMBS, our preferred Canadian YouTuber. He asks, questions for next week, which is today. What are some affordable power conditioners a guy could use for a gig to ensure a good, clean voltage to his amp?
So yeah, I think this is sort of a follow-up to one he'd asked previously, which was just like which ones we might use or which brands to consider.
Furman would be.
I was just gonna say I still don't remember the model names exactly. Just that's one thing I didn't really touch up on beforehand. But yeah, Furman is still gonna be the easiest way to get, to buy into a power conditioner for your amp. Like that's going to be the starting point. I mean, at this point they're almost like the radio. Like radio does utility stuff. I feel like Furman is kind of the other side of the utility market right now in terms of power conditioning. But even then, though, I've still been told you still have to get up to they have a model that's in that 700 to 800 range. I've been told that that's the one you have to get up to in order to even get the benefit of true power conditioning. So.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
Yeah, it's one of those things like if I were to do it, because Jake and I actually talked about this a little while ago, like if we were to do it, it'd be something like a band should go in together. I mean, Ben's in a different situation. He's filming more videos and stuff now, so it could be more relevant to him now. But if you're in a band, I would just try to get everybody in the band or play enough gigs and save whatever the band money. Use the band money to get one, because that's going to be the best and easiest way to do it. And that way everybody's not out a bunch of money.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah.
That's the way I would do it.
And
they're going to use your shit anyway.
Well, right. And it's like you might as well give it the best chance you can. So, I mean, honestly, and the main reason that it brought it up for Jake and I was playing at Lion's Lair. Power there is awful. I think I took the power out in the building for a blip when I first fired everything up the last time we played there. And then once we were in there, I was getting all kinds of just horrible static and weird power fluctuations. So that's basically what a power conditioner does, is just it hopefully eliminates most of that.
And a lot of those old buildings, especially if it's a bar or restaurant place.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're pulling a lot of amperage out of the system because they're running
all the fridges and
walk-in coolers, and you have all the coolers behind the bar and all that stuff, and that stuff once the compressor goes on, it's sucking a shit ton of power out of the whole system. I only know this because I worked in bars and restaurants for.
Like, this is a problem I have dealt with.
I've dealt with this. Well, I worked at one place, and we used to have bands pretty consistently, and we always had this problem, and I kept begging the owner to fix the situation for the stage because it was a big deal in the company I worked for. And he just kept ignoring me, and I was like, we're going to have a fire.
Yeah.
Like, it was that bad.
Right.
And it's not a power conditioner, but a lot of times the point is
just addressing good power. Yeah.
It's just the power was bad because the building wasn't built for the purposes that it was being used for. Right. So, anyway, there we go. Okay, so next.
All right, nothing here asks, are there any gear trends within the last 10 years or so that you wish would just go away? Any gear trends during that time that you were reluctant about at first, but have now fully embraced? So basically any gear trends in the last 10 years that we hate, and any of them that we're actually kind of happy about.
I think that the overly nitpicking gear trend is the one that drives me crazy.
On a visual side or auditory side?
On the visual side.
I was going to say the visual side was
like
what is getting me.
Like, you're just nitpicking the shit out of like a $250 guitar. It's like...
Or $100 pedal or something.
Like nitpicking the hell out of it, or just going strictly by aesthetic. Because that's another thing, and we're just running into that with the new Fender pedals.
Yes.
And I'm reading on forum, people are like, oh, the knobs look like, yeah, look at the box, oh my god, the font. It's like, not
even heard them yet.
Fucking one of you has even played the pedal.
Yeah.
But there was one, and they had like, I don't know, 50 comments, and everybody was complaining about, this and that and the other thing, and it was all dumb shit. It was all stupid stuff, and it's like, it had nothing to do with the pedal. Nobody's heard them yet.
Well,
and
honestly,
they all
I think
had complaints, and I'm like, you know what?
A big part of that issue is just social media in general. Because I think that's made everything everything visual criticism is just, that's basically what social media has become. But then when you throw that onto gear, I feel like that is a huge trend that's made its way from instead of like Instagram models and shit, it's all pedals and gear, and if it doesn't look as cool as possible, people think it. Because it's like there's a lot of companies out there that make things that actually look really cool, but they don't sound that great.
Not that great.
And then I've seen other companies that make things that look like, some dude in Russia like chiseled it out of a rock or something, and it sounds amazing. So it's like there shouldn't. Especially I feel like especially as guitar players, musicians, you should be hunting with these, not with your audio.
I mean, we get. I don't know. Oh, I don't know. I don't like this stupid thing. And it's like, man, that guitar plays great, and it sounds great. And the one hang up you have is like a little tiny thing that nobody's ever going to see. Right. It's like that in the investment side of gear. Like people buying
that was the one I was going to go with.
Yeah, people buying gear for investments.
Like gear speculation now. Like it's become a thing. Like there's
aggravates the hell because these are.
Well, there's this lawyer that's on like YouTube, and all he does is basically make videos about how to buy and acquire music gear as investments and then sit on it. And it's like all I see when I watch that is some dude basically depriving musicians of actually using the gear.
Of good gear.
Yeah, like that's all that is. Like all you're doing is drying up the market so that other real musicians that would use it and actually make something positive with it, they're not. Like now it's just a monetary thing. And it's
like our Univibe.
Yeah, it's like a piece of art. Yeah.
It's like the guy that wanted to buy our Univibe, and we knew he just wanted to buy it to sit on it.
Right.
And I'm like, we're not going to sell you this Univibe.
Just so it can live
Just so it can sit on a shelf, and you can tell your other crony assholes that you got a Univibe that's from a working '67 Univibe. F that guy, man. Well, pay you cash. I don't give a shit what you think. We're not taking it.
Well, yeah, it's like some things especially as musicians, it's like I do wish more people would value how things get used in the end rather than just how they look or if they're an investment or how many other people are using it. Like it doesn't matter how many other people are using it if it works for you.
Yeah,
I have several pedals that like I love more than any big company's made. Like the treble booster that Chuck made me. Like,
it's
I love that
pedal.
thing. Like nobody else has one. Well, you have one exactly like it, but nobody else has one exactly like it. And it's one of those things that's like.
But we're going to use those different anyway.
Right.
The thing is that I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely a negative shift in terms of people. Well, even like what we deal with Reverb, pedal pictures. Like the pedal itself is, like that big. but like you blow it up on your computer screen that's in 4K or whatever the hell. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, it's like the thing is the size of, you know, a shoebox at that point.
Yeah,
And it's like, yeah, of
a
course you're
little
going to see,
tiny-
so yeah.
a little tiny chip. I mean, we've had people that are like, "Oh, it's got a little tiny chip." Are you going to the first thing you're going to do is step on it.
Right. You're going to literally smash it with your foot.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, they call them stomp boxes for a reason, so.
Right.
I don't know. But yeah, that's the big one. In terms of gear trends that we do like, though, that have cropped up over
Or that
the
we've kind of embraced.
I would say, I mean, I think the big one, I think everybody would probably go for this, though. Home recording is infinitely easier than it was, you know, even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say, like, that's that trend, or even just the trend right now that exists with, like, the Iridium and the ACS-1 from Walrus and the Kempers and all that stuff of, like, the profiling and making some of that easier for home musicians. Like, I think that's a positive trend. I mean, it's not going to beat tube amps, but they're still great. Like, I still think they have a very, very valid purpose for, like, today's world, especially when, you know, everybody's stuck at home again and all that.
Yeah.
So,
I don't really have a good one for that. So I'm gonna
and like a positive gear trend.
Yeah, I just
Well, I would say even another one, like, and this sort of plays into a question we'll have later
Well,
from
hold on,
Janice.
yeah.
Okay, no, go ahead. I don't want to speak for you on that one.
okay. I do got one. Now that I've had a minute to kind of
Yeah.
go over it, is the multi effects.
Oh,
So at first I was like, nah, I don't want nothing on multi effects.
well, yeah. I see what
That
you're
we've
saying.
seen like the HX Stomp,
And the GT Core.
the GT Core, stuff like that really is putting out like good sounding stuff.
Even the
Like very-
IR200 from Boss, like that.
Yeah,
Was, yeah, they
like
lifted that out.
very convincing tones. Like at first I was very reluctant to that because you know you
I
usually
still
used
am.
to.
Yeah, I still am, but I agree.
I'm more. I haven't full. I don't know that I'm fully embraced, but I've definitely come around to the fact that I'm like, man, it sounds good. The audience probably isn't going to know, and
Right.
it's convenient. There's a convenience there that I think is it going to be for me? It could be.
Right.
In the right situation, I could see myself using like a
Well, and I do have to
GT
say.
Core 1000.
Well, that was what I was
GT
gonna say,
1000
yeah.
Core.
Right.
I could see myself using that if I had a particular situation too. You know, if I was doing just a total cover band thing, bar band cover stuff, and it had different tones that I needed to pull.
Yeah.
I would probably do that because it's all right there. I don't have to carry a giant board.
Right.
I'm also, you know,
Well, that was what I was going to say.
I'm
was-
getting older, so I don't want to carry a ton of shit in anymore.
Well, I was going to say, I wasn't really that sold until, you know, MJ basically spent like at least, I don't know, a month or so going through the GT 1000 just to make sure, or the GT Core, trying to make sure that it was going to be the right kind of move for him for his upcoming tour. And honestly, like even just going through that, because we spent one night, I think we ended up staying like 2 or 3 hours late one night just going through it. And until that, I wasn't really that sold on it. But once because like the presets were okay. But like once we actually had a little bit of time with it to dial it into what we were trying to do,
Yeah.
like it sounded really, really good. It was really convincing, and it really was not like a fight. Like in terms of, you know, being intuitive and not being difficult to set up, it was a great option. So yeah, I would definitely say those of like multi effects obviously have kind of crept up over the years, over and over and over, and a lot of
They've been
times they
around
weren't that good.
yeah, they've
but
been around
like
for
now
a
they're
long
getting a
time.
lot better. Yeah.
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 So I don't know.
I'd agree.
That's what I would go with.
All right. Next one's Terry.
Terry 3G. Question is, I seen yous recently got a H&K Black Spirit 200 floor model amp on the used gear. Have you checked it out yet to give an opinion on it?
Yeah, he had asked me previously about this, but I've not been able to.
I haven't played it.
I was gonna say I haven't been able to play it since he asked me about it, so
Yeah.
I
haven't
still
played
don't
it
really have a
because-
good opinion for you on that one, Terry. Sorry, man.
Yeah, and I haven't played it because, well, similar.
Yeah. Well.
I can physically play. Problem is,
Yeah.
last couple weeks have been very hectic. This put me out for a few days before I could actually even get going again, moving
Right.
around, and it's been a lot of catch up because beginning of the new year and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
a lot of negotiation stuff going on,
Right.
with the big deal with the big manufacturers and that kind of stuff. So
Well, yeah, this is the time of year too that like all the inventory stuff happens, the price changes start happening, all the ordering starts happening again.
Tax accounting stuff starts happening. The renegotiating the deals with big brands like Fender and Yamaha and stuff like that. So it takes a little bit of time to put all that together. So
yeah,
but we'll try it.
Yeah, I was gonna say sorry, Terry. I know that's still not helpful, but anyway, and he also says he thanks and he hopes we have a good 2022 for the year for the store. Hopefully we've used up like our bad shit in this first month. Yeah, and the rest of it will just be gravy for the rest. That's what I'm hoping.
I'd like to think so too.
Yeah, I feel like we've
earned some
peace for the year.
Yeah, we've earned some cruise time, man. I swear, the last few months have been this effing building is driving me nuts.
Yeah.
You know, it's
busier than ever. We got this going, and like it just and life is beating us up. So
so it's been been challenging, that's for sure. But we're good. We're resilient.
Yeah.
All right. So moving forward, Cullen James asks, "Do you think the age of COVID has/will permanently change how people think about playing music and buying gear?" I think that's a two-parter.
It is in terms of the playing music part of it. I would say yes and no. I don't know what it's like outside of Denver right now, but what I feel like is happening is a lot of the established bands are having not a lot of trouble getting gigs again, but I do feel like a lot of the bands that were either a little bit smaller or the bands that formed during the pandemic, there's not a lot of space left for them right now.
Yeah, and because there's still restrictions a bit, and then there's still hesitations from individuals. So, yes.
Well, yeah, because I feel like a lot of the older, more established bands, whether they're touring or not, at least in Denver, are getting like first dibs and first crack and more promotion. And I feel like a lot of the smaller guys or the ones that, because there was so many bands and guys that we know that were in bands that fell apart and then reformed over the last 2 years. And because it's like a different moniker and a different name and the whole thing, they're not getting the same kind of promotion.
Yeah, where they used to be.
Yeah, so I feel like in that regard, like there's not only is there a large gap of time that's happened, there's a huge hesitancy, like you said, of people even just going to shows, and then you compound that with, it just feels like it's not like it's never ending, but it feels like it for a lot of people. I'm like, I know you guys all know that, like it all just feels like it's not going to stop. And so I feel like a lot of people are kind of getting very comfortable with just staying home. And it's like that part's changing things a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easier to just stay home.
It is. Yeah, and it's like even, I'm always one of those people, like, if once I'm out and about, I have a great time. But sometimes convincing myself to do it is a little hard.
It's the energy to move the rock.
Exactly, yeah.
It takes more energy to get the thing in motion.
Yeah, but once it's moving, I'm okay.
Once it's moving, not in the same way. Sometimes it's like,
well, and it's like, I imagine if there's anybody there's anybody even more curmudgeonly, then I imagine they just probably quit altogether in terms of going out. So, yeah, I mean, in that part I am pretty sad about things, but I mean, I do think, I guess I'm hoping it'll sort of be like Prohibition, where everybody's been so deprived for so long that once everybody feels comfortable, that everybody will run out there and start doing it again. But
I think we'll have a
I hope so.
Yeah. I like to think that once we get past all this stuff, it's going to be a roaring 20s kind of situation. At least I'd like to think so.
Yeah, I really hope so. But in terms of the gear part,
As far as buying gear, I think yes, in a way. It's changing because what's happened is a lot of people have just been buying even more online. So that is changing. I think it was an inevitability anyway. I think we're just seeing in general trends of buying online was every year was getting more and more, more and more and more and more. And I think the pandemic basically
solidified that.
It solidified it, and it pushed the timeline up too, because that was the only way.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No, that was
This is the way.
Yeah, this is the way. Yeah.
So
no, you're right. We were forced, even in our case, we were forced to take the online side of it more serious because for a window, that was the only means we even had of getting anything out to people.
Right.
So that did, we went from having maybe 10% of the business being online to 25 to 30%. So
so we gained a lot more, and we're not the only ones.
Right. So imagine if your business was ready to accommodate that, you probably, because that would be the other side of it. to think, I guess, would be if you weren't ready for it, then yeah, it probably impacted it on a more negative level. Yeah. For us, luckily, it was a little more positive. But
right, there was a lot of companies that weren't ready for when the pandemic hit, and those guys were usually probably older companies that have been around for a while, and they just said, let's just call it a day.
Right.
Some got through it, some didn't, some adapted, some didn't. But as far as I think overall buying, yeah, it's going to keep things because people are a little bit more used to buying online.
Well, I think the research level too, a lot more people now that they're working from home, because even I know a few people that work from home, because the customers tell us this, they'll be working from home and they get a break or whatever, and the first thing they do is start plotting out a new addition to the pedal board, and it's because you're at home and you can do that, and you don't have somebody over your shoulder being get back to work. You can take a minute and look at that or dream about whatever gear you're going to buy. Yeah. And so I think it is kind of one of those things that now more people are home and more people are, I'm sure, what do you call it? Not impulse buying, but when you're trying to fill a need, people aren't being able to play. They're not, most people have an entertainment budget that they can't use because nobody's going to movies. And not a lot of people are going to shows, so I feel a lot of people.
There's still an imbalance there.
Yeah, and I feel a lot of people are supplementing. They're making some people buy shoes, some people buy gear. It's that kind of a thing in terms of helps you feel better.
We have no shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't buy shoes for 8 years, but we buy
one pair of shoes. And when it's done, we buy another pair of shoes.
Exactly.
But it's only one pair of shoes.
Yeah, once every 8 years.
But lots of guitars and pedals strewn about.
Right. But yeah, I think that's part of it is people making themselves feel a little better with gear. Oh, actually, we still have a fair amount.
Yeah. Okay. So we're still good. So Charles75 says, what are the thoughts on the Gretsch 5230T? Also, what amp would you pair it with? It's the Electromatic Jet.
Yes.
Single cut with
the Bixby. Yeah. Just putting that out there so everybody, because
the solid bodies.
Yes, the solid bodies, not the semi-hollows. Yeah.
I personally like them. I mean, it's a nice alternative to, a Les Paul style guitar. With the Bigsby's nice. I'm a big fan of Bigsby's. Some people hate them.
I love them.
I hate changing strings. Whatever.
It's really not bad.
It's not that bad.
It really isn't, yeah.
I love the smoothness of a Bigsby.
There's an inherent flutter that they do that other trim systems just don't do.
Are more harsh.
Yeah.
So a Floyd they do their thing, but I do love there's something about a Bigsby that I really dig.
I think Bigsby is the best trim for somebody that's not a full trim guy.
Yeah,
because it's one of those things because Jake's even told me that for years, that anything I've ever had other than the Strat, anything I've ever had a whammy on or any kind of tremolo on, because I started with a guitar that didn't have one, I don't rely on it.
Right.
But the Bixby to me feels just like my guitars that didn't have trems on them. So to me it's like home base, but I still have the option.
Yeah, if you need to put something on there, but you're not utilizing it.
Yeah, and it doesn't
a ton in any of your music.
Right.
That's why I like it with one. I mean, I got two guitars with Bigsby's on them, and I like it because it's I could play that because I have the.
Well, it still feels right. It still feels like a Tune-O-Matic in terms of the bridge. Mm-hmm. The whole thing doesn't change. Because even Floyd's the only Floyds I really like are the Goto ones, and it's just because everything's rounded over.
Yeah.
And I'm used to. I guess I'm just used to being. Playing more metal, I am used to resting my palm on the bridge a little more. So, to me, Bigsby's don't disrupt that feeling too much.
Yeah, it still feels pretty good. And then as far as what amp to pair with that, I mean,
that's subjective, but
right, and it's going to go with whatever you think, or whatever music you're going to kind of play with that. I mean, are you going to go heavier, or are you going to go, if you're going to play, a rockabilly or a blues or even country. Or, even just alternative type stuff. You can get there with an AC30. You can get there with a Blues Deluxe. You can get there with a, Deluxe Reverb.
I was gonna say honestly, something like this would be a lot of fun, even through a Tweed Deluxe or something in that vein.
Yeah, I would go that route, but
yeah, and if you didn't like something that squished, even one of those little 18-watt Marshalls, one of those could be a lot of fun with that style, especially a Gretsch. I mean, that could be a lot of fun. So honestly, with Charles, I don't, because it's actually because he was on Ben's show the other night and actually had some pretty cool. He built some cloth top guitar like the Texas Toast guys.
Oh,
but he
cool.
did like the whole. It was a Strat, and he did like the whole thing in cloth.
Oh.
And it actually turned out really cool. It was surprising, and but I didn't realize like. I don't know, with his, like, I guess I don't know what kind of music Charles plays. So that would be, like, the main thing is, like, I don't know what recommendation. Because to me, like, the Tweed Deluxe, having that hand-wired one that we have in right now, it's cool.
57.
Yeah, it's cool, but, like, I can inherently hear there's a sag to it. Like, when somebody lays into it, it's not an immediate amp. Mm-hmm. It's a very kind of,
it's a bit scoopy, I believe.
It is a little bit. Like, it has a mids bite, but it's more like low mids. And then it's also, like I said, it's just got a kind of an inherent sag to it. So, like, if you're more of a rock player that wants more immediate stuff, then I would probably not necessarily go that route. But again, it's a very subjective thing, or personal thing, I should say. Oh, all right. Let me get that one more time.
Oh no, Captain, we've lost visuals. Yeah, it's all right. We're still here. Oh, and we're back.
Okay.
Let's hope we're back.
Didn't zoom out, did it?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's going to end. You're like, hey, it's half a podcast again, like the first one. Okay, so next question. Janice LALLA asks us, question if there is a saturation point where are no new things to be done. Wait a minute, what?
So is there a saturation point where there are no new things to be done in terms of, like, gear? Like, is there a point in the market where there's just nothing else to... And I would say, honestly, the effects side of this is where if because, I mean, guitars are guitars. People are probably going to invent a million different tweaks and a million different things. Like, I don't know that the fundamental aspect of the guitar is ever going to change that much. But
right.
I do think with, like, pedals, every time I think there's nowhere else to go, people do find somewhere. The one thing that I don't, and this actually kind of goes with this question, I feel like there isn't necessarily going to be, like, a new effect, or at least not that I've heard in a long time. Like, I don't remember the last time where somebody just straight had, like, a new effect, like something that's not a trem.
It's always something that's part of something else.
Yeah, it's a combination.
Has a flurber.
Right.
Like, ooh, it's the new flurber.
Yeah, the new flurber machine. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's always a combination of effects. It's always, it's like a delay with octave, or, a reverb with modulation, or it's always combos of things now. Or even, Walrus putting out, like, the M1, like, to me, like, that one's a cool alternative to, like, the Mobiuses and the modulation machines. But at the end of the day, there's still not necessarily a new, the lo-fi effect, that's sort of becoming a bigger, like, getting that recorded to vinyl sound, like, that's becoming a thing.
The warped vinyl kind of deal.
Yeah, so I would say, but that's still not even really a new effect. That's modern technology trying to pursue an old sound.
I used to do that when I was a kid because we had a dimmer switch.
Oh, yeah.
And my record player was plugged into that.
Oh, so you could...
So I remember as a little kid listening to records and it would slow it and it would go... Yeah, it was pretty funny. And it also worked when I was trying to learn something. You could slow it down
and try to
figure it out. So...
But yeah, I mean, in terms of where there's just no new things... I guess I suppose there will be. It's one of those things, though, because, like, everything we do is auditory. So it's like trying to describe the invisible, like... Yeah,
and I think there'll always be... I think what will happen is just going to be different combinations, and you're going to keep...
Right. Or better ways of doing things.
Better ways or infinite combinations you can put and do things. So I think it'll just keep going. It's like food.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no new foods.
That's a good point.
So, but we have a bajillion different dishes and a different stuff from different cultures and other things like that. So, I don't know. That's kind of the way I... equate it, and I'm hungry.
Yeah,
so I could eat something. I could go for a damn sandwich. That's for sure. Yeah.
That's a good question. Jake Yergert. So his question is: says I dated a girl in high school whose dad met isolated Kuwaitis who knew the riff to Back in Black from AC/DC while he was in the military in the '90s. So he's basically saying riffs used to permeate in the public consciousness and to a point where, like, anybody could sing one. Like, you could meet anybody anywhere and they'd know the riff. So he's saying, what do you think was the last riff that really had a life of its own, or maybe a song that made it into, the wider consciousness other than just, like, guitar players? His example is possibly like Seven Nation Army. I was gonna say that's a really good example of it. It really is, and honestly, I do feel like that might be.
I think it's going to be more the problem. I don't know problem.
Well, it might be one of the last ones though that like really hit where
guitar riff wise, because there's a lot of stuff that's going to be pop music. I mean, that comes and goes, but a lot of that stuff does kind of stick around a bit. And
well,
that's
it is
going to be
like
more widespread.
Well, even like Metallica with Enter Sandman, like you cannot go to a sports game and not hear that song.
Right.
Like that's just
Back in Black is another one.
Like those, but he's
You
right.
Shook Me All Night Long.
Right, and again though, that goes late '80s, early '90s. Like, so has there been anything since then that has the same level? And no, I really because there's not even honestly a band. I mean, the Foo Fighters are almost like the last big rock band. But like Metallica, nobody's dethroned Metallica for years. Foo Fighters, they pretty much are firmly where they're at. Red Hot Chili Peppers really haven't changed much, and they're firmly in that spot too. So it's like there's not any like really big bands that are right now on the way up that are like defining stuff as because I feel like
I'm trying to rifle through stuff. Going, what have I heard on sports and who's the big?
I mean, within metal, for a while, I would say, even though I don't like them at all, I would say Avenged Sevenfold for a stretch. They would have been one band, at least within, if you're into metal or hard rock, they would have been
like Pantera. There was,
again, though, like 30 years ago.
Yeah. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Recently, though, I can't,
No, he's,
because a lot of stuff, even the mainstream pop rock, if you will, just it's not a lot of very riff driven.
Mm-hmm.
It's chordal.
Well, yeah, because even like even Polyphia, that like where everybody was freaking out about Polyphia for a while. They're another band where like that, like the song that made them and broke them into the scene. It's not you can't hum that. You can't hum that shit.
Yeah.
Like you can't. No, there's not like in his example. There's not going to be some isolated dude out in an oil field in Kuwait that knows that song. Yeah, he's not going to be. Yeah. So it's like there's ones that you can kind of hum or anybody might know, but I can't think of a really good one since. Because even bands.
You guys throw some suggestions.
I was going to say this might be a good custom.
Plus we're on the spot,
right?
Because we read these. We
but this is like a really tough one. Like I'm really trying to think. Like you said, even while I'm talking, I've been trying to think of like anything that even remotely gets close to that.
Yeah, that kind of gets stuck. That's been somewhat recent. I don't.
Well, and what's weird too is like I saw an article the other day, and this is more of a discussion than a straight question, but it was saying that basically I think more than a third, or actually no, it was more than half of modern music sales are old music repackaged more or less. And it's like, but it was going to the argument of saying like there's not things that are getting as prevalent. But I don't agree with that because like most of the bands that I really, really love right now are, younger that are getting, or, they're around my age or whatever. But like they've been around for a while and within the scenes that I like, they're big, but not like, they're not big on a level. Well, so I think it's more people are not doing enough on their part to look for stuff anymore.
But yes, to a degree. But I've said this before, we are because we can all go to our own little bubbles. Right. People don't go out of that bubble. So when I was a kid, you had like the rock station, the pop station, but everything was always around you. So how many times have you like, I'm singing a song, and you're like, how the fuck do you know that song? I'm like, because when I grew up, there's no way that I didn't know the Boy George song.
Right.
Or like or Wham. There was no way that you could get around,
Well, no, you're right. Like, even I feel like
Wake me up before you go. There's no way you could get around that song when I was a kid. But now, I think it's much... We all have Spotify. We program it to what we want to listen to. We have YouTube, and we search what we want. So everything can be very much compartmentalized into the only stuff that you like, and that you're not fed anything new or exposed to new stuff.
Well, no,
I'm not saying everybody's like this, but I think it's very much like that.
Well, no, you're right. Like even with TV, like when there used to be, even like news, everybody's always bitching about the media. Like there used to be a time where there was like two to three stations at the most. Everybody was more or less hearing, the same facts at the same time with little opinion. and like
it was the news.
Yeah, and it let everybody kind of develop their own opinion about what happened, but more or less everybody was working from the same information.
It was before the middle of the 80s.
Right.
So you figure that out.
Well, yeah. But the thing with that too, because like I even feel like for the tail end, I think Jake would probably also say this since he's about my age too, that my generation might have been the last one though, like where that was the thing where we were just saying, because like I do remember, even though I hate it, I remember all the pop shit from when in the early 2000s from when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. But like once everybody started having cell phones, I don't remember anything.
Or Zooms.
Yeah, I don't remember anything ever permeating to everybody at the same time after that. Like, because I remember all the music videos from then. I remember all the stupid songs, all the boy bands that were huge then. The Britney Spearses and the Christina Aguileras and all that shit was huge. But nobody has really permeated the whole like the global consciousness.
Yeah, and if you're into pop music, then you get some of those really big bands, but they're fleeting compared to, I think, some of the more established bands. But then we are also getting very basic music from pop. Whereas, like, I feel like I'm older, yeah. But a lot of stuff that we had early on, even before shit that was done before I even was into it, but even like stuff from the 70s, there was a lot of creative stuff going on there too.
Well, and the instrumentalists.
More complex musicality compared to 3-note songs.
We're just saying the same three words over and over and over and over and over and over.
A lot of pop music, it could be the same thing. And it's just.
Well, and they just take one phrase and they literally say it 100 times, and
right.
That's the song.
Yeah. There's not a lot of Freddie Mercurys out there.
Yeah. Right.
But anyway. Well, but there's a lot of great musicians. You just got to go search for them. You got to go hunt for those guys that are actually songwriters and
that's
doing
the thing, though, like,
that's not the mainstream. You got to find those people.
Well, even with us, with who we're talking to right now,
I don't know where the hell we went with this conversation. But.
Well, no, it was a good catalyst of just things breaking out of the bubbles.
Yeah,
you're right. Nothing really does that. Nothing breaks into everybody's bubble anymore.
And you should do that with news too. Don't stay in your bubble with news.
Yeah,
watch some shit that's not your normal thing.
Well, honestly,
just
even if you
get a different perspective, and it works for music. It works for everything.
Well, even if you don't agree with it, like I do watch some of that just so I know what other people are consuming, because like I do want to know because if you can't have a conversation with somebody if you don't have an idea of where they might be getting
it's just
their information from. Yeah,
like I said, it's perspective. Music, same way. Like, sometimes I'll listen to a pop song going, that is catchy as fuck.
Yeah.
I don't really like it, but man, it is catchy. Mm-hmm. I get it. But it does give you, there's something you could still extract from it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're running long here today, aren't we?
That's fine. People seem to like the
longer format. Good. Tell all your friends. We need to get monetized.
Last one's just kind of a filler question because Jacob's trying to troll you. So. Yeah.
Last question is from one of our customers, Jake, who asks, what are Ike's thoughts on Gabagool?
Yeah, because Sopranos,
the Sopranos did the whole thing with the Gabagool. Hey, we got the Gabagool. Nobody says Gabagool. Sorry, I'm Italian.
When you cleared it up for me, I thought it was
nobody says Gabagool.
Yeah, I thought it was some made up word for that. Like I didn't know that they were just flubbing up a word so bad.
That's half of the Sopranos shit. That's what they do. They just F the word up. So Gabagool is really capicola. Okay, it's the sliced meat.
Right.
That's what it is. You get it in a nice Italian sandwich. That's what it is. It's not. Nobody says gabagool.
But it's still like it blows my mind that even like how do you go from capicola to gabagool? Like
because
that sounds like a baby with like mush mouth said that. Like
well, that's what happens. Okay, so here's the thing. Being Italian American, grandparents from Italy and stuff like that. If you weren't learning Italian and you spoke English, American,
right?
And you're listening to the words that are spoken in Italian, you may catch them up, but you didn't learn how to write it. So auditorily, you may have learned. It's like Goomba. There's no word Goomba. Nobody says Goomba. It has a meaning, but nobody says. Well, they do say Goomba. Don't get me wrong.
They do.
It has a meaning, but it's not a real word.
Right.
I think
it's become one, but
it comes from compare, which is a friend.
Oh.
So you're a Goomba, a compare.
Okay.
So that's a friend. Goomba, you see the correlation?
Yeah.
And then a lot of Italian words, and
Well,
it
it's
happens
like
in
bud,
the East
buddy,
Coast.
friend.
Yeah, in the East Coast, sometimes you'll hear people say like mozzarella. They just drop the end. They drop the last letter off, and that sometimes becomes a dialect thing in Italian. I'm not well versed in all of it, but some of it I know that
some
sometimes
Italians sound like they throw an A on everything anyway. Like some of the accents that I've heard, like from Italy, some of them sound like, because there's the one that's a little more like not whimsical, but it sort of has more of a singy songy kind of sound to it, and then there's the other one that has more of those harder ends to it, where like things don't roll into the next word.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's like, if you Sicilian, their dialect is different. So what happens is sometimes what somebody might have been saying in Italian as an Italian American child growing up, they might not have recognized it that it had an O or an A at the end of it, because it just didn't sound like that, because the way they talked, you didn't hear it.
Like when
I grew up,
when people say like supposedly, but people spell it supposedly, kind of those types of things where they spell it like they've said it, even though the way they're saying it is a little funky too.
Right, and a lot of those guys, some people would talk fast and they're very succinct in how they say a word, and then you got the guys who are like, you get those guys,
right?
And that it was just a lot of like grumbly. My grandfather had a deep voice, and he was like, "Hey, Anthony, oh my gosh," And it was if you didn't know the word he was saying, when we were kids, we would pick it up, even though we weren't fluent. We knew what words meant or what was going on. My grandmother was, my grandmother, my grandfather, and then my great grandmother were all from Italy. So, they spoke Italian, and we were in an Italian neighborhood, so we heard it all the time. We didn't really write it out or learn it.
Right.
So some of those things with other kids
morphed with time,
and some of those other kids were second generation or third. So by the time it got there, it just got morphed. So Gabagool is not a word. Okay, Jake, you've heard this before. This kid knows how to hit my buttons.
I know.
Good.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just nonsense.
Well, and it still blows my mind though, because at the end of the day, especially when it regards food, I feel like Italians would take that serious to the point like you wouldn't confuse it.
But there's stuff that also too that that's here that we think it's Italian, but it doesn't exist in Italy. Like Alfredo, that's not an Italian dish. That's an Italian American dish. It was made here. There's certain things that were like, it's almost like there's a lot of Mexican food out there that you think is Mexican, but you're not going to find it if you go to Mexico City.
Well, yeah, most of what people in the States consider Mexican food is technically Texas food. That's just migrated north, and it might have inspirations from Mexican food. But because that's the thing, I feel like people even come to Colorado because we do actually have a lot of authentic Mexican food here, and people come here and have it, and they're like, "What the hell is this? This isn't like their Tex-Mex that they're used to having back home."
This doesn't have cheese whiz on it,
right? Exactly.
Like I have in El Paso.
Well, even tacos. I mean, that's one of those things. There's tacos, and then there's Taco Bell tacos, which developed and had the hard shells, and that became a whole thing. And now there's people that think that that's what a taco is, versus Mexican street tacos, which is just like a tortilla, some meat, a little bit of onions, and some cilantro, and that's it.
Well, when I lived in San Diego, one of my next door neighbors was born in Mexico City, and so we went out, and I'm like, oh man, because in New York, I never got, I didn't have an avocado until I was 30. There wasn't a lot of avocados in my neighborhood where I grew up. So, but when I lived in San Diego, we were having a conversation, and I'm like, man, I fucking love burritos. You guys got, we were just having a conversation. Right. I'm like, I never was introduced to this food, to Mexican food, and I was like, I loved it.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, you realize that burritos, that's an American thing.
Right.
That we didn't have burritos. So I'm like, I had no idea that wasn't a thing. So same thing works in Italian. Some of the stuff that seems like it's not really in Italy. It's just more of a morphing thing from Italian Americans. You got to remember, we had a big influx in the turn of the century, early 1900s and stuff like that. So by the time you get to these kids that are in my age or so, it could be second, third generation. At that point,
well,
I had family that was from Italy, so it's different.
I think every culture is kind of that way, because even when I was a kid and I would hang out with some of the Arab or Ethiopian families that we knew. Like chicken and rice in the States for anybody from there, and I'm sure it is still over there too to a point. But like the prevalence of like chicken and rice dishes being like the staple, it's basically like meat and potatoes kind of a thing. For the staple of anybody that's over here that's like that, or that's from that area, it's a staple here. But like if you go there, a lot of it, like they don't, it's not like there's an abundance of chickens just running around in the desert.
Right.
So it's like a lot of that stuff was stuff that became a thing over here where they took their spices and stuff that they loved and used over there for like lamb and stuff, but they just shifted it.
Yeah, to something
and chicken's more available over here, so then it became that, and then now it's this thing that it's basically moved from over here back to over there to where chicken and rice is like the undisputed meal, like that's the main staple.
Yeah.
And so it's like it just kind of moved from one spot back to the other. Yeah.
And it morphs.
Right.
Because, the Italian immigrants, they came over, they didn't have everything that they had back there. So
Exactly.
some stuff was substituted.
Yeah, in terms of ingredients, yeah.
It was different. And, there's even things that I don't see anymore from when I grew up because nobody grew, because, everybody, when I grew up, mostly everybody had a garden. And there was
That's
tomatoes
cool.
and squash and eggplant and all sorts of
But that's
stuff.
like a throwback from the wars too, in terms of like having to learn to make, grow your own stuff to get through, and
Yeah, so, like a caboose, it's a long hanging squash. It's
Or like an
really good.
eggplant?
It's also, it's also a slang for somebody who's lazy as fuck. Because they don't
Just
hang around.
Yeah.
They don't do anything, they just hang around. Caboose.
There you go, Jake. You got another one.
Yeah. You're our caboose, bud. All right, that's it.
On that note.
Yeah. We've rambled on long enough. So thank you guys. We appreciate you hanging out. For those of you that have hung on this long, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.